All right, hey everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are on the call with Public Lab to wrap up a recent review and update of resources on air quality data. So over the last few months, we've been gathering and synthesizing resources on visualizing and communicating air quality data. And we've been talking about this topic on our weekly open calls, which some of you have attended, and then posting questions on the website so that others can answer and provide ideas, and also posting materials that we've been creating on the Public Lab website. So for the first half of this call, we wanted to just do some introductions and then also share some highlights from that work that we've been doing, mostly sharing the materials that we've created on the website. And then the second half of the call, open it up to just a casual discussion about the topic. So whatever questions people have or ideas or projects that they're working on, we can kind of all talk together about those things and connect with each other. So without further ado, we can start with some introductions since we're a pretty small group at this point. If people want to introduce themselves on the call, it'd be great. So I can start and then I'll pass it over to someone else to do an introduction. But we can do your name and your pronouns and where you're calling from. And then if you want to share something that you're interested in learning about on the call today. So my name is Jeanette Lim. I am the research manager on the nonprofit team at Public Lab. And my pronouns are she, her. I'm calling from Bellingham, Washington, which is close to the Canadian border. And I'm really interested in just learning about what people are working on in air quality, community air quality monitoring. I know a couple of you already in the projects you're working on, so just love to hear what's sort of currently happening. And yeah, I'll pass it over to Dania.
Thanks, Jeanette. Hello, I'm Dania. I am the Air Quality Research Curation Fellow at Public Lab this cohort, and I'm calling from near Los Angeles, so historically Tongva land. And I am excited to actually hear about how Public Lab can help folks in your air quality monitoring and visualization journeys. I have some background in data analytics, so super excited to help out as where possible. And I'll pass it to Mary Jo.
Hi, I'm Mary Jo Burke. I'm calling from New York City, Lower East Side, and she, her. And I'm working with an organization called LES Breathe, Lower East Side Breathe. And the project started because we're concerned about the air quality in the neighborhood, especially as it relates to the destruction of the East River Park that's happening right now. And so we've started gathering data via purple air monitors and then handheld monitors. And we haven't really visualized the data yet, so we still need to work on that. So that's our next step. And I'll pass it on to Patricia. Sorry.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Thank you. I am Pat Popple. I'm from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, and I'm she, her. And I've been working for the last number of years, actually, on a grant, or several grants, in fact, that were written regarding purple air monitors and the impacts on health, particularly, but as they relate to frac sand mining here in the state, because we have a lot of open type pit mines that are going on with processing stations and transload stations and so on. So we have lots of respirable crystalline silica dust in the air. And so I've written several grants, and I've been working with Dr. Crispin Pierce at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, along with his interns and students. They've had some sizable findings. The grant was originally proposed for 65 purple air monitors to be placed around the frac sand mining facilities. However, COVID has slowed them down, and in fact, Dr. Pierce, because he's with environmental health, has had to do some research on other things such as sewage coming out of the university and how it relates to COVID and air quality issues with and related to COVID and so on. So all the grants have been finished, and we're still working on it, and he's still, I'm sure, installing purple air monitors and has a few places left to go. But anyway, that's me. Thanks.
So this is Dave. I think I'm the last one here. I'm him. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. I am a climate, environmental, and social justice advocate, and we are still trying to figure out how to use air monitoring and what we can monitor. We are battling a few things here in Baltimore. One is an incinerator that we're trying to close. There's really no air monitors around it at all, and none are really required, except for the little air monitor that's read once or twice a month on top of the incinerator stack itself. We are also trying to prevent a crematorium from being built into a residential area. Again, looking at air monitors and how they could help with that type of situation. We've got also a few other things in Baltimore that we're really trying to judge the impact on. We've got a lot of highways that run right through major neighborhoods that we know have been actually, when you look at the social justice of them, have really been splitting Black, brown, and low-income neighborhoods with these big highways. With a lot of trucks going through, and also train yards going through. Right now, there are a few purple air monitors scattered throughout the city, but none are really connected, except for you can go to the purple air site itself and see the monitors. But there's no real awareness in the city. When you start really discussing this with people, people go, oh yeah, we know the air is bad, but there's no visualization of it, and there's no real proof to drive it home every day of how bad the air is. Baltimore is ranked number 2 in asthma for the 100 worst cities in asthma in the country. So we know it's out there, but we're really trying to do a whole lot of grassroots efforts to get this to be at the top of mind. Unfortunately, we had passed an ordinance in Baltimore for the a Cleaner Air Act, but that was thrown out by the federal government, judicial, because they felt that it overstepped the bounds of the Maryland Clean Air Act. So we're trying to do legislation on that, but having monitors to really let people know what's going on, it would be very much helpful in doing this. So I'm just trying to learn and see what next steps we should take in as far as monitoring and best practices around the country. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave, and everyone else. This is all really helpful to know. So thanks for sharing that background. The presentation that we're going to have here does focus on the air quality data. So once the data is already collected, but everyone is also in a state, it sounds like, where you're actively monitoring and potentially looking to expand that monitoring. So let's make sure to touch on those things when we have our discussion time, because it seems like we could probably share some ideas across projects there. Yeah, thank you all for being here, for sharing your time and your experiences and stories. So for the first about 30 minutes or so, 30 to 40, I want to say, we will do a presentation on the materials that we've been putting together on air quality data. It's really just to guide us through some of the methods and resources that we have on the Public Lab website. So I'm going to share my screen. And then at the 1:45 mark, we're on different time zones, so that's going to be different. In about 30 minutes, we'll take a break, a 15-minute break, and then we'll regroup for that discussion. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. Okay. Can you all see a title slide, community science resources for communicating air quality data?
Yes.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you. Okay. So like we've been saying, we're here to talk about air quality data, and just to kind of place us in the community science process where we are. This is very overly simplified, but just trying to sort of talk about the content we're focusing on now. If you are in hand of some air quality data, like something you've collected yourself from a purple air monitor or another sensor, or you've gotten it from an open database on air quality, and then you want to do something with that data, you want to communicate it with others so that you can raise awareness of an issue or create change on an issue, which sounds like everyone on this call is interested in doing, then there's that step in the middle of communicating that data. So making it into a form that can be shareable and then sharing it out. So that's what we're focusing on today and have focused on for the last couple months at Public Lab. And a little bit of housekeeping, just where we're keeping these resources online. On the Public Lab website, there is what we call a tag page at publiclab.org/tag/air quality data. That's where you'll find all the latest posts and questions and any other materials that we've created on air quality data. And where we kind of knit all these materials together with a bit more background information and kind of that connective tissue tying it together is on a wiki page called Air Quality Data at publiclab.org/air quality data. And this resource, this wiki, and Public Lab in general is open for anyone, so you can sign up and then add any resources that you have to this wiki page as well, and contribute. So we would love for you to do that if you'd like to. So on that wiki page, we've kind of tried to more or less organize things in like an order of what you could do with air quality data, starting with some what we call kind of like getting started type things. And what we've identified as one of the first things to do with air quality data is to understand it better. So before you even start kind of like getting to making fancy visualizations, what are some of the things that you can do to understand that? So we've got a question on the Public Lab website where there's already a conversation happening with some answers to that question. And things that are coming out of there are better understanding where the data came from. And we'll talk about this a little bit. Also, what kinds of units of measurement your data are in, creating like rough graphs or charts. So not anything that you're intending to share out widely yet, but just so you can kind of get a feeling for what your data are showing. And then also looking at things like equipment specs. So the whatever monitors or sensors you're using to collect that data, what do they show are the minimum or maximum levels you can detect with that. So diving a bit more deeply into understanding where the data comes from. So there's a lot on here, but really what I'm going to focus on is the right-hand side first. So this is on the wiki page, which outlines just some questions that we can consider about air quality data to help us understand where those numbers are coming from. And it's understanding those numbers helps us figure out how we can then talk about them and present them. So for example, is the data from a sensor? And if it is from a sensor, is that sensor stationary? Or is it one that has been moved around and taken to several places? Is the data being collected continuously over time? Or is it being collected on certain days at certain locations? So there's sort of this like time and space set of questions that can determine the best way to then show that data and communicate with other people. And there's a series of other questions there too that can also help you just better understand what you have in hand. So is your data coming from a lab report? So some people sample air and then send it back to a lab. So what you actually have is a report rather than like your own set of raw numbers. And then at the very bottom, one that I like to highlight is the data actually not even numerical at all, or is it things like odor reports or an oral history or a visual observation? Like, are you seeing colored dust where you are, that sort of thing? Are you seeing smoke? So those are all forms of air quality data that you might have. And this is all just summarized then on the left side, where this infographic that Renee, one of our public lab team members, created to highlight some of the places where you might be getting air quality data from. Diving deeply then into one of the suggestions that came from a community member, AG8N, on the public lab website was understanding the units of measurement for the air quality data. And I think this one's really helpful, and I wanted to highlight it here because I think it helps us think about how we communicate the scale of the measurement, because a lot of air quality measurements come in these units like micrograms per cubic meter, which is like not intuitive, at least to me. So thinking about like, what are the ways we can present that so it's a little more intuitive to people. And an example that I found was from this carbonvisuals.com, which is communicating how much carbon dioxide gas gets released from burning 1 gallon of gasoline. So this was a number that was just reported in kilograms, and then like, how do you feel what that is? So they presented here as a volume next to some recognizable figures. So this person with a kiddo.
I'm just going to say that is a lot of carbon dioxide.
I know. I know. What just 1 gallon of gasoline too. So think about, you know, like my car holds like 11 gallons, 11 to 12 gallons. Yeah. Okay, so that was just some of understanding the data that we have. And then another crucial step before moving on to analyzing or visualizing the data, which is cleaning and organizing data. And I kind of start laughing at this section because, like, I know it doesn't sound fun, but it is so important to take this step because it gives us the confidence to know that we're dealing with accurate data, and also just makes it easier to work with in that visualization step. So there's a few resources we have on the website on data cleaning and organizing. There is data carpentry, which has some open access workshops. And even after the workshops are done, they keep all their materials online. So you can walk through their tutorials there. And we also have on the public lab website a wiki page, another wiki page on data cleaning, where we have the links to that data carpentry organization, and then also some activities we've created ourselves on cleaning and organizing data. And Vanya's gonna get to that in a bit more detail in a few. One of the things you'll find on that wiki is this concept and practice of tidy data. And I wanted to include it here, especially so I could share this really lovely illustration by Allison Horst, which covers the basics of tidy data. And tidy data refers to making a table of your air quality data so that it retains like the meaning of it. And that sounds kind of funny, but what it means in practice really is like each variable has its own column, and then each observation has its own row, and each cell in that table has just one measurement. So it sounds kind of I think like straightforward isn't quite the right word, but it sounds just like a basic way of organizing things. But the power in that is that it makes it easier for other people to understand. And it makes it easier for other software programs to understand. So once you start plugging these things into like data visualization tools, those tools can read tidy data better than messy data. So an example from air quality could be a tidy data table that looks like you have like an ID number for a measurement in one column, you have date in another column, time in another column, its own column. So you're seeing here in time that we've got measurements every, what am I showing here? Every minute. And then particulate matter, 2.5 concentration in its separate column as well. So each cell in that table has its own measurement, and every minute you've got its own row. So yeah, that's my that's my spiel about tidy data. But it's a whole thing that like there's papers written about. So there's a lot of thought going into how to make data usable on its way to communicating it and visualizing it. And now I'm going to hand it over to Vanya to talk a little bit more about some of the resources we have about cleaning data.
Yeah, for sure. So I created an activity called Data Cleaning with OpenRefine. OpenRefine is an open source tool where you can upload a data set, and there are some manipulations you can do and some light visualizations that you can look at to really explore your data set and also do some cleaning. So this activity has a couple parts. Two of them are a little bit more, one of them is a little bit more theoretical. So the first one is, what even is clean data? So this goes into different ways to think about your data and to understand, like, is it actually clean? What does clean data mean anyway? And for example, data is clean if it's complete, if it's accurate, if it's valid, kind of makes sense, and if it's consistent. And then so, kind of once we have kind of that baseline understanding of what is clean data, then we can do some exploration onto your data set to know how clean it is. And this data exploration allows you to examine not just the quality of your data, but also determine how much cleaning might be needed. That's kind of the second part. And then the third part gives you a couple steps to start cleaning your data sets that you can upload directly into OpenRefine. Examples of steps would include removing blanks, replacing values, especially if they're placeholder values. For example, in the data set I use, if you after reading the documentation, I found that they use -200 as the placeholder value for blank rows. So able to find those and remove those rows. Also, removing duplicates is an example of data cleaning steps. And to kind of take a step back, data cleaning is really the practice of correcting or removing erroneous records that could definitely affect your results, especially if you summarize them up to a lower level of granularity, and also impact your visualizations once you start making graphs. So if you have any of these questions listed in these bullet points, definitely worth checking out the step-by-step activity and getting started with data cleaning. And again, you don't have to use this tool. This activity was built with this tool, but the concepts you can apply with any tool that you or someone on your team is familiar with. I'll pass it back to Jeanette.
Thanks, Vanya. Okay, so that is a little bit on data cleaning and organizing. So now we're going to transition over to that side of communicating data. So you have clean and tidy data. What are some of the things that can come next? in actually sharing it out and communicating it, visualizing it. One of the ways that we have thought about like planning what you're going to share regarding your air quality data is through what's called a data story. So it's really just like one example of a framework for thinking of who you're communicating to, what you're communicating, and how you're going to show it. There's other ways that you could frame this for sure, but we kind of focused on this concept of a data story because it taps into the narrative, like the storytelling, which I think grabs a lot of people, and especially in making meaning for air quality data, which can in and of itself be kind of abstract. So we do have an activity on the website on creating a data story to communicate environmental data. So not just air quality data, but any environmental data. And speaking of visuals, it is an infographic form, and it outlines some steps here for creating an air quality data story or any community science data story. And this is a great example of an activity to do with a group of people, because you get to talk about the story elements together. So it's starting with exploring your data, and that's part of like understanding data. So we've already talked about some of that. We've already done some of that. But then getting together with people and talking about the story that you want to tell. So who are the characters? What's the beginning, middle, and end of your story? Deciding on the tools that you're going to use for creating your presentation or visualization, whatever communication form you're looking for. And we have more on that coming up too. And then creating those visuals. Finally, building that story, like combining your story with the visuals so that you have laid out a narrative of an issue that you're concerned with, and then a call to action at the end. So that's a key part too, is highlighting like what people can do after they've listened to the story. And on that activity on the website, there is also just key elements of telling a data story. So the things that you have are a narrative story, your air quality data, and then a storyboard. And this is the tool that can help you plan out what visuals you might need. And a storyboard is kind of illustrated up here in the graphic. It's used in like films and comic books, and it's really just a way to kind of map out anything that has a story arc to it. It doesn't really need to be fancy at all. It can just be like kind of hand drawings or writing, but it helps you sort of plan that narrative. And when you've done that bit of planning and then are ready to turn your air quality data into a visualization, there are a lot of ways that you can do that. So some that are more common for air quality are things like graphs and charts, infographics that combine visuals and text and data, and then mapped air quality data. And we're going to see some examples in the next few slides. But just wanted to highlight here that the particular visualization that you will choose will depend on the goals. So those things that you figure out during while you're designing that data story. And this infographic is on the website as well, on the Air Quality Data Wiki, to help you think about what are some of the ways that you can frame those goals. So like, are you trying to compare values over time? Are you trying to show a relationship between two things? Does your data really lend itself to a map because you're trying to show how things vary in space? And then one more tool to highlight is the Data Viz project at datavizproject.com. And this is created by a design firm called Ferdio. And it's not specific to environmental data, but I wanted to highlight it because they do allow you to explore different data visualizations by function, which is like kind of, what do you want to show? So there is way more here than I think anyone would be able to digest in one time. But I found it kind of helpful to kind of see some of the different visualizations that you might not see all the time, and do have that sort of like intuitive element. So there's like, you start to see like human recognizable things in here, like a cartoon of a person, or like an exploded view drawing. So that's like a device that you see all the parts of. So yeah, so this is another tool available online. And then just some examples of air quality data visualization. So this data is from Mary Jo from the Lower East Side Breathe Group in New York City. And it is data from a particulate matter sensor that was running continuously in one location. And each data point in this graph is one measurement from that sensor. And you can see it's plotted against time. So pretty quickly, just from this graph, you can glance at, okay, when the 4th of July fireworks happened, you saw this big spike in particulate matter, and that came from the smoke. So this is an example too of like one of those kind of rough graphs that you can create when you first have air quality data, to understand just really at a glance what's going on, like what patterns are you seeing, and also alert you to any major problems that you might see. If you were running your sensor at the 4th of July and you saw nothing, that might indicate to you like, okay, there's probably something happening with the equipment. This is an example of a map showing air quality data. So this comes from Air Tracker, which was created by the Environmental Defense Fund, and it combines air pollution data with wind data in a visual map. So each of those colored dots is a sensor, is a regulatory air quality sensor. And then these arrows that you see are measured wind speeds and directions. And this big cone is a modeled wind direction that then indicates, okay, if you're at this point right here, where did your wind likely come from? So you can start to then connect to like, okay, what are the sources of the air that I'm breathing at this point right now? Maybe there's some industrial facility that you're downwind of. So this is an example of like a really interactive visualization for air quality data. And here's an example of a pictorial chart for air quality related data. This is comparing different air quality standards from the European Union and the WHO. So one thing I see right away, based on more orange on the WHO side, is that they have sorry, someone's in my yard. They have more stringent standards for what counts as harmful air pollution than the European Union in this urban areas, at least. And then an example infographic, and I like this one because it does that thing where it taps into like intuitive items or objects. So this is a spray, what is it called? Spray paint can, to illustrate the amount of volatile organic compounds that are reduced by small businesses in this program. This is from the Pollution Control Board in Minnesota. So once you know what kind of data visualization or presentation you'd like to make, then there are lots of tools that are available to make them. And on the Public Lab website, we have a collection of a few resources to help you choose. And again, I'll pass it back to Dania to highlight one of the resources we have there.
Yeah, before I do this, I know there's a question in the chat. Do you know what platform was used to create the interactive visual from the previous slide? Are you talking about the air tracker map?
Yes.
Yeah, it's probably some sort of GIS tool. I don't exactly know what they use on the back end, but I suspect they have some sort of geospatial layer that they're just layering on top of this map.
Yeah, and Karina, I don't know off the top of my head, but I did find the contact information for the folks who are coordinating that And I'll find it and then share it in the chat.
That would be useful. Thank you.
Yeah, so we created this post, and this post contains a Google sheet that compares different types, which you can use without any coding experience to upload your clean and tidy data to create really kind of professional looking visualizations. So this post is really helpful if you're curious to just learn about common features available in free data viz tools. Also help find the best tool for your needs, depending on what kind of story you're hoping to tell and what kind of graphics you would like and what kind of use cases you need it for. And then once you find your tool, then you can generate really high quality data visualizations for exploration or presentation with and without coding experience. So parameters that we use to compare different tools include ease of use, whether or not an account is required, accepted data upload formats, and much more to help you pick the best tool for your needs. And we're hoping this is a living document, so definitely feel free to check out what we have there and also add your favorite tools to the list to help other people who will be looking for their next data viz tool.
Thank you, Dania. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about visualizations, which are fairly, I think, computer intensive, and wanted to highlight some things that you can do beyond computer generated graphics. So there's more things you can do beyond charts and graphs and maps. And one example is the air quality flag program that the EPA has. So this is actually flying like a physical flag that with a color that matches the air quality index forecast for the day. And so schools across the US are flying these flags so that they can alert the students and the community residents what the air quality forecast is for the day. And those forecasts come with like recommended actions too about what one should do based on the projected air quality. There's also using sort of like embodied experiences and art to promote understanding and engagement with air quality and other environmental issues. And again, I'll hand it back to Vanya to expand on this a little bit.
Yeah, so I was really curious to learn more about embodied experiences and different ways of having people engage with air quality and environmental data. So this is really a way for people to understand pollution beyond just numbers and graphs. And this is really where artists and creatives can use their craft to translate science and data in ways that engage different senses, different neural pathways. So think like 3D experiences, sounds, music, larger than life installations, performances, costumes. And I recently found out about project where they're making meringues in different cities, and because when you make meringues you have to fluff them up with a lot of air, so the meringues actually take in the pollution that's already in the ambient air. And you can taste the different pollution after the meringues are baked. You can compare what the pollution tastes like across cities. So I thought that was a really unique and really interesting way of engaging people and having them talk about air quality. I think that experiences like these that invite active participation, co-creation can really inspire this unique dialogue, more reflection, and even promote action.
Thanks, Vanya, definitely. And an example that Vanya did find was also these air pollution pods. It's an example of an immersive experience. And this is by artist Michael Pinsky, where different cities, their air pollution is simulated in these tents. And it's a non-toxic way to do this. They use non-toxic substances, but they do let you kind of like experience and feel and breathe what the air pollution is like. from these different cities. And this is not an air quality example, but I wanted to include it because I thought it was funny and it was certainly memorable. This is French fry consumption by month, using just the very literal elements of French fries. So again, highlighting just this way you can kind of connect with people using everyday objects. And again, back to Vanya for a highlight of another way to show air quality.
Yeah, so life forms can be ways to understand environmental quality. So bioindicators are living organisms that can communicate environmental quality through a couple different ways, either presence or absence of particular species that are known to thrive in either high pollution environments or only thrive in low pollution environments. Changes in visible organism health, you can see for some plant bioindicators, their leaves will change color or change, there will be visible spots in it depending on the quality. And also you can do elemental analysis to understand the pollutants that got absorbed into the organism. So I create an activity. So lichens are one of the most studied bioindicators, and they're really good at indicating air quality because they're so sensitive to it. So this is I created a hopefully fairly simple example activity under a local environment to get a sense. If you won't get a sense for, depending on the types of lichens that you see, you can understand if your air quality might be on the better side. You'll see more robust lichens. If it's a little more polluted, you'll start to see more of the orange, like less surface that have less surface area. Check it out. If nothing else, you can check it out for the pretty lichen photos.
Yeah, I think that the connecting to other life forms and sort of like the softer parts of nature is always like an effective strategy too. Okay, so in the last few slides, we just wanted to re-emphasize and talk about the communicating with people. So sharing out the air quality data that you have and making it meaningful to others. So there's this quote from an article called "What Makes a Data Visualization Memorable?" I'm just going to read it. So a visualization will be instantly and overwhelmingly more memorable if it incorporates an image of a human recognized object. If it includes a photograph, people, cartoons, logos, any component that is not just an abstract data visualization. We learned that at any time you have a graphic with one of those components, that's the most dominant thing that affects the memorability. So memorability is one aspect. There's of course data being accurate and fitting the context that you're working with, and other factors as well. But I think the memorability here of tapping into like what can people recognize is a powerful piece. And related to that, what can people see themselves in the data that you have too? So I think this is why maps can be such a powerful way to share air quality data, because you can look at a map and then go, oh, like, oh, this is where I live and work, or this is where I go to school. So connecting people to the data pretty visually. So once you've got that data, sharing it out, this is a bit more of like the nuts and bolts of it. What are some of the ways you can do that? Well, we've seen examples of providing real-time online charts and maps on a website so that residents can log in and then see what's going on where they are, providing data for download so that other people can use it, they can visualize it as well. Various forms of notifications. So the flag program is one example, but also sending like alerts through texts or push notifications. And then also just like grassroots advocacy. So sharing that data out on social media during town meetings with the media so that other people can see what's going on and getting the word out too. And that all that said, like we would love to hear your ideas and experiences with that piece, that sharing that data out more broadly. We have some examples on the Public Lab website already, but we would love to hear more like during this call. And then also if you wanted to share them on the website as well, we would love for them to be there. So with that said, just some of the next things that we're thinking about with this topic is collecting more examples of those stories on communicating air quality data to create change on local issues, and then testing more testing more data viz tools, and then expanding that table that Vanya was highlighting, and then hopefully actually adding another table to highlight some tools that are like beyond those computer graphics. So more creative means of communicating data. And then maybe something like a choose your data viz catalog for environmental data. So something kind of like, choosing by function, like I've got sensor data that runs continuously over time and it's from one place. So what kind of visualizations are available to me? I think it'd be neat to create something like that, and would love to work with anyone who wanted to do that. And finally, last slide is just the thank you for being here and listening to this presentation. We're really excited to talk with you about this topic, and excited also for you to join Public Lab. If you haven't already, you can sign up for free at publiclab.org. The topics that we've been posting this content under are air quality data and some other tags you see there, so you can follow those topics if you want to be kept up to date on when there's new material. Post any questions you have, answer questions, drop into our weekly open calls and talk to folks. And then also continue talking about this topic. The rest of this week, we have a guest speaker panel. Mary Jo is going to be one of those speakers. And then also on Friday, we're going to do a live build of a DIY air sensor, particulate matter air sensor. And you can find the most current information about those events at publiclab.org/events. And that is it of us talking presentation mode. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And again, just thank you for joining and listening to that. And yeah, for folks who joined halfway through, we just did a little presentation part. We're going to take like a 15-minute break now. So let's actually meet at 5 after. It's not a whole 15 minutes. So 5 after the top of the hour. You can just go off video and mute and whatnot and whatever you like, but take a little break and stretch, and then we'll come back and then have a open discussion time. So 5 after the hour.
consequences of air quality actually get more information on their air quality. So there's kind of also that like knowledge injustice that's additional burden on these communities.
Yeah, and if you that really kind of maps into what you see in the Baltimore is the sensors are down the middle and then over to the to the left, and those are the more wealthier neighborhoods where all these sensors are, and then the other neighborhoods they are not in. And a lot of the neighborhoods where we know that there's real problems, we don't really have any sensors at all. I just saw that the EPA has put out some money for grants to get more sensors. So I'm trying to get the city to file a grant to get more sensors in the city itself so we can better understand what's happening with the air quality here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely an awesome resource to take advantage of.
I missed
really
the
hope that the
beginning of
city
what
can-
Dave said after the break, but my group, we did I realize this is an issue, a monetary issue, but we did it privately as an organization. We fundraised in the neighborhood and were able to get money to get 5 sensors. We've only got 4 up right now, but I don't know if that's an option. If they're charities or anything of that sort of organizations that might fundraise with you, because I don't know. I mean, if the city doesn't get the monitors, that might be another option for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm trying to work out all sorts of ideas, and we've got some organizations really working on this, and they're actually beyond the point of, well, sensors really are not going to tell us anything more because we already know that the air quality is bad, and and the asthma is bad, and we can look at reports and studies that we have that show that there is hospitalizations and deaths caused by this, but it doesn't seem that we have the ability to bring this, issue to action. It's more of we've got awareness but no action, and I'm really looking at, do we have to get back into awareness and really go? We have to get this in the face of people every day to get them to do action, because even in some areas where people know that there's a lot of trucks that go through it, they just say, yeah, there's trucks that go through there. What's the big deal? And so it's really bringing the awareness of what particulates, how damaging they are, and depends on which way the wind is blowing. That could be really going right across the playground, and your kids are living it.
Do you have a social media or any way to anything that's, I don't use Facebook, but maybe a Facebook page that every day there could be a post about what the air quality is like? There's a organization that we talked to early on that it was a subscription. It was way too much money for what we were able to afford, but they also have they send out every day an email and tell you what the air quality is like in the neighborhood. Granted, the sensors are far away from us, but I don't know if there's ways to promote the air, whatever the daily air quality is every day, like what Jeanette and Dania showed in the presentation, the flag color even, and that's the way Daily Breather sends out their email. The background color tells you. You don't even have to read much further than just looking at the color, but it's like, okay, it's a bad day, oh, it's a good day, kind of thing.
Yeah, we don't really have anything like that, and so that's really trying to build up a citywide organization to do that. Unfortunately, with the Baltimore City, it is split up into which is really nice in having neighborhoods, but having 300 different neighborhoods, it's tough to really have neighborhood organizations really get that information out, or get involved with all 300 organizations to really be getting that out.
All right, I'm going to put in the chat the daily. It's called Tembo. It's Daily Breather. and you could sign up, you could see where their monitors are and sign up for it, at least get a sense of how they do it.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah. The other question I have for both you and for Pat is we are using purple air monitors, and I understand, but we're also using handheld ones that measure VOCs. And I don't know, especially for Pat, if the purple air monitors are getting everything that you want to track with the SANS. I don't know if the SANS, I don't know how they, if they are VOC or if they're a particular matter. I don't know how they, you need to measure them. And with Dave, you talked about the cremation site. Again, I don't know how best to monitor that, and what monitors are good for that.
Yeah, we've done a lot of research on cremation sites, and actually some of the other monitors that you'd really want to have out there are mercury and other heavy metals, VOCs, and other dioxins are other things that really would you want to monitor. And some of the issues that we really run into, and this is really kind of the frustrating thing, is the crematorium industry or the funeral industry has managed to carve themselves out of the federal air quality standards. So they're not classified as an incinerator, and therefore they are passed under the radar and don't have any really requirements at all for monitoring or being deployed in residential neighborhoods.
That's excellent. Yeah.
We heard something similar in Louisiana where sugarcane burning was able, there was some loophole where they didn't have to with air quality standards.
This is Pat Popple from Wisconsin. And I guess I can speak to Mary Jo a little bit about the purple air monitor use, and maybe to Dave as well about the funding. I was able to write grants for 5,000, 25,000, and then also 8,000 eventually we got as well. Plus we had anonymous donation, one anonymous donation of 5,000. Plus there were others as well. And several people, well, to speak about northern Wisconsin, we have several counties involved with frac sand mining and processing and transloading. And a lot of the trains are traveling all over the northwest part of Wisconsin. But by putting up the purple air monitors, which I think Dr. Pierce thought were probably the best at the time that we could think of, and because they were inexpensive, we decided to go with those. And our plan was to put up and getting funding for students, interns, and so on to help with this on their free time. We were able to we planned to put up 65 purple air monitors throughout the region. And you'll be able to see those on the Purple Air site. But those purple air monitors are I mean, our purpose was to collect PM 2.5 data. However, we have to remember that in the spring, there's maybe pines giving off pollen or various other kinds of things in the air, maybe people burning leaves in the fall or whatever. To compensate for that, earlier on, there was crowdsourcing for a couple of very, and I honestly, right at this point in time, I don't know if I can tell you which instruments they were, but they, we were able to allow Dr. Pierce to purchase 2 of these instruments, which are very technical and which you can get sampling from, and then send it off to the labs in Wisconsin to be speciated. So in that case, in one of the worst model areas where we have a frac sand mine and with winds catching, pushing this stuff and pulling this stuff all over the area, they were able to mount those instruments there. So that not only were we collecting the purple air monitor data, but also the data that was speciated. And thank goodness the grants were could be used to pay for the speciation. I don't know what the results are. I can't tell you those because I don't know if they've been received back, and I haven't had a chance to talk with Dr. Pierce about that. But grant writing is really critical. I do not have a 501c3, or my original group actually did have a 501c3, but in going through the process, because Dr. Pierce is affiliated with the university, we were able to park the funds with the foundation at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. I know some of the people there. So we were able to work on pulling out funds for the various uses that were needed and according to the grant that was written. So even if you can't, if you can't affiliate or don't have your own 501c3, funds can be placed at some location if you want, so that you can pull those funds out and use them for your special project. I don't know, Mary Jo, did I answer your questions?
You did. And are your monitors around Eau Claire? Because I'm looking at the purple air map right now.
Honestly, they are not all there. And we have a problem in Northwest Wisconsin because we do not have good
Wi-Fi, probably.
yeah, well, number one, some people don't have a computer. Some people don't have Wi-Fi, or maybe they don't have a computer that they can free up for collecting the data. But anyway, and the communication in a sense became a problem. But each one of these purple air monitors contain an SD card.
Yep.
So every time that Crispin goes out with his students, or in fact, he could send out an IT person going to each one of these locations and download the SD card so that you get the data. So on the map, if you look at the purple air map at all, you do not see all of those purple air monitors up or installed. They don't look, I mean, it looks as though there's not many, maybe. But actually they do have the SD card in them. And so it becomes one of those issues where you have to drive several hundred miles altogether to pick up the data or download it.
So I have a monitor on my balcony and it's got an SD card because we didn't know what we were doing when we first ordered them. But mine's connected to my Wi-Fi, so it's continuously sending data to Purple Air. But what you're saying is that you have some locations that don't have that, so you're using the SD card as the way to hold the data till it can be downloaded.
Yes, yes.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you said some people don't even have a computer to which to download it. Okay, got it.
So we're working actually with groups of people who don't, I mean, they could be disadvantaged. They're living near a frac sand mine and they've been convinced maybe to lease their land or whatever. And so we have purple air monitors up at locations that can afford it, and we have purple air monitors up with people who can't afford it. Some people can afford a purple air monitor and they have it installed because they purchased it.
Right.
So we actually may have more than 65 up eventually, which is a good thing. But I think we have Native Americans too. The Ho-Chunk people have been taken advantage of by the oil and gas companies to put these frac sand mines in on their properties, or even not on their properties, because they don't always own a lot of properties. But they may not have the funding to put that purple air monitor up. And in some cases, the tribe or even other tribes are not necessarily so sure that this project is the best project for them. There's, no matter where you look, there's a lot of distrust, I think. So, I mean, we have to try to build the trust. One of the things that we tried to do at the onset of all of this with the grants that we received was to, and we called it Project Outreach. So we could go to a public library, for example, and invite people in. They might just have a small room, but it would be free. Serve a little bit of coffee and cookies or whatever, and then speak to the people about the projects that Dr. Pierce was working on. And with the students also sharing data and that kind of thing. So that was a good way to educate people about the value of purple air monitors and what having one installed at your property could do. We had several of those throughout Northwest Wisconsin, but with the coming of COVID, it just stopped that kind of outreach to people. The one way to outreach to people that I have is the Frac Sand Sentinel. And I do put in, Dr. Pierce will share data or findings or an article or something of that nature, or an experience that he's gone through with his students. In fact, it wasn't too long ago, the students and even a few public members went to a public library in Augusta, Wisconsin. They installed the purple air monitor on the library, and the group proceeded to teach the people a little bit about what purple air monitors do. With a student, we went outside, for example, and I've been through this many times, but we took frac sand that was contained in a vial, shook it up, and put it right near the frac sand, or right near the purple air monitor. And by having a computer right there, you could see the levels of the particulates, the PM 2.5s rise, immensely. And so it's that kind of experience that people need to almost have in order to understand more fully what's happening with purple air monitors and what they collect or what they do. I know that occasionally, and I found that because I have a purple air monitor, which I purchased, that if I back my car out and let it run, for example, and the purple air monitor is on the garage, and you can see it spike. Even if you take a match and light it right near the purple air monitor, it will spike. So the thing works. There's no question about it in terms of particulates in the air, be it smoke or be it something else. I've had spikes in my purple air monitor several times, but I live about a block and a half away from the railroad, and we have frac sand cars going by here every once in a while. I haven't heard them lately, but they're out there. There's quite a number of them that have gone through here. At one time, to do one frac, you had to have 100 cars.
And
So
they don't have to be covered, I take it?
And well, yes, these are sealed supposedly, but they are also, if you walk along the tracks, you'll find this white dust. It looks like powdered sugar on the tracks. So we know that stuff is falling through the cracks, so to speak, and going into the air. And it doesn't take much with many trains going by to really stir that all up. It happens on the highways too, where you have sludge and other things being dropped from these mines. Unfortunately, maybe fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. But frac sand mining is not working very hard these days. I mean, there's been bankruptcies and other kinds of things. So we may be in a time when this data is not really at its peak in terms of measurements. So that's interesting. One thing I do have to say is that we had all the forest fires this last fall, and coming from the California area, the Canadian areas, and so on. And one day I thought about, because here we had all that cloudy, or skies that looked bad. We didn't see the sun, whatever, overcast with pollution. So I looked at those purple air monitors, and in my area, all around wherever the purple air monitors could be seen, they were either dark orange or red or really very dark red. So you could really see it could have been either the mines that were giving off some of that, but also the smoke from the western states and Canada. So that was an experience in itself, because that was like a full 2 weeks of that kind of registering.
I had something similar. I went to with a friend up to New Hampshire, from New York. We went up to New Hampshire, where the air is supposed to be beautiful, and I had an Atmo tube portable monitor, and it was showing really bad air, and he said, your monitor's broken. And so then when I looked at the maps, and it shows that the entire country was having bad air from the fires from the West Coast and from Canada. And it lasted, as you said, it lasted for at least a week. And you think that, yeah, you're up in the mountains and it's fresh air, and I guess, you're affected by the air on the, to the west of us for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you're talking about the fundraising, I'm wondering, Jeanette and Vanya, is there a fundraising effort with your group? I mean, would this be something, because Lower East Side Ecology, LES Breathe, we would benefit from that. Dave would benefit from that. Sort of, how do you fundraise to fund your projects? And then for Pat, how do you fundraise to actually get somebody to drive around to collect the data who has a computer?
Right. Well, that's a question. I guess I have to say this, that in order, you really have to make some very positive contacts with a whole bunch of people. And because I've been working with this for 13 years, I do have a lot of contacts, and those are the people that I send out my frac sand sentinel tool. But originally, to start all this out, we started with Concernship with Citizens, and we had meetings every week on Sundays for 77 times. We didn't miss a Sunday except for Christmas or Christmas time or Thanksgiving time or something, but we were intense about meeting. And that's the only way to get people fired up, except that, toward the end, people dwindle off because they don't, it's hard when you've got a family or whatever, and there are other things to do. Committing yourself to every Sunday for a couple of hours is difficult. But we still have people out there who do, tell other people what's happening out in their area. If they've got a mine nearby, they're the first to tell about some of that stuff. And I can pick up the phone and call any number of people that I want to call, just because I have those contacts. And I'm pretty much doing this on my own right now, because although I had a team of people, you have to get a team of people to help you make decisions. But I know that fundraising, for example, when Dr. Pierce needed money, and another leader and I, he wrote the letter. I sent it out to a couple thousand people, and we collected $65,000.
That's great.
Yeah, you can't beat that. And I also had made some connections with people in the fundraising, or not in fundraising, but organizations that give funding for certain kinds of projects. And probably 10 years ago, I had a group come to this area, and I and several other people met with them. And they said to me at that time, Pat, if you have a project, just let us know, and we might be able to fund it for you. Well, probably in 2019, I thought of that group. I hadn't asked them for any funds. Meantime, I'd written already one for $5,000 from a popular funding group. And so I wrote to the guy, because I knew that he was on my list, and I remembered him. And anyway, and I think he even called me. But I finally, after we went through the $5,000 grant, And we had had another 5,000, another couple thousand that were added to all of that part. I wrote to him and I said, you know, we're having such great success with this project right now. Do you think that you would have any interest in funding this for even greater amount of money, or for a amount of money so we could continue? And he said, let's have a conversation. And so we did by phone. And he said, you know, I think we can give you 25,000 if you just write a grant. You know, so I wrote it and we got it without any problem. And then there was another 8,000 because of COVID. We couldn't do all the stuff we really planned to do. But, you know, I think you have to be sort of creative. You have to find someone who is willing to, a scientist, to work with you on being able to collect the data and analyze it, because none of the citizens could do that and be successful at it. But he knows how to analyze the data. He knows about collecting it, and he knows the importance of citizen science. So I pushed the idea of if you're able to put up a purple air monitor, you can be a citizen scientist, and that's really a good thing, you know. And so a lot of people have bought into that concept. They weren't too sure, but then they were able to get a free monitor, and so that's significant. So being a citizen scientist is really important. The other piece is, can I just go on and
Sure.
just tell you one other piece? We worked on a Sand Sentinel program as well. I worked with Stevie Lewis, and I won't tell the whole story, but we ended up having a very successful booklet where we could get people to record data on some of the stuff that was going on. A portion of it might be air quality. For example, if they saw dust flying off a train, or an uncovered truck, or any of the other violations that can occur with frac sand mining. That Sand Sentinel program helped people to journal various activities that they would see. So working with Public Lab, we came up with something. In fact, you can find something about that, and I think you within the Public Lab stuff, just to get an idea of journaling. We have one lady who journals every day. She sees, for example, them emptying the dust bags and so on, or they see it, they journal it, and they tell exactly what's happening. So she's got a historical document that she's still keeping up with, unless they go on vacation or something, regarding one of the mines here in Wisconsin. It's incredible. She's done incredible work on that. And that, you know, the documentation is critical if you're really looking at historical stuff. And when you go to court, you know, it's really good to have that documentation that can't be taken away. So
Yeah, so
that's my
on
story.
with that. No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And have
Well,
you done things where you correlated the journaling from the Sand Sentinels with the data that you're seeing?
To be really honest with you, I have not. You know, we know that people, I mailed out eventually, because I would have liked to have had gatherings of people coming and then handing out the booklets and explaining them. And we did that for about 50 of them. But with COVID entering the scene, that was impossible. So I ended up taking select groups and sent out probably another 75 of them to various people. I have not heard back from them. You know, this is just a difficult time. So the thing about it is that the concept is, because we finally have attorney involvement now, but the concept of the entire thing, which I conceived in my own brain, probably way back in 2011 or 10 or something, was that we really need to document this stuff so that when this becomes a legal conflict, with attorneys involved, et cetera, if we can find a way to do that, we would be able to retrieve documentation. And we have about 50 people, I would say, that are engaged in a legal battle with between the attorney and several frac sand mining companies. So, and where that status is, there's a lot of privileged information out there, and I don't ask the attorney about who. I know some of them, of course, but I can't reveal that information. And and he expects or respects the fact that I would not reveal that. But I think to keep the historical documentation is critical because of the future litigation that can occur. So, does that help?
That's all just incredible advice. Yes, Pat, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, really, like really, really good advice. And Mary Jo, to your question about public lab and fundraising, it's a question that we get perennially. Lots of groups have asked that. And what public lab doesn't do the fundraising itself, one thing we can do is have that be like a subject of a deep dive, so we can kind of work together to like crowdsource resources on what are the small grants that are available, and then start to document like Pat's advice, basically, like put it in a place so we have it as a like, try these things, just like the importance of the relationship building, and then maybe like host a call where we can try to bring together people who've done successful fundraising, and then just share tips. And then
I
yeah.
wasn't thinking that you guys would do the fundraising. I think I was thinking you'd do what you're saying, where you
Oh,
would
yeah.
bring us together. And the
Yeah.
other thing too is how to write a letter, how to look for grants, and how to write. I hate to say this, but you have to write to the grant, right? But I think that'd be awesome, because I think that would be very beneficial to so many people and so many organizations. That would be great.
Yeah, definitely. But something we could probably do, the next like deep dive we're doing is going to be on some topic within probably oil and gas. And then after that, I think we can line up something like fundraising, basically. Dania?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, this is definitely not the first time we've heard this question. And I think in the interim, kind of a stopgap solution is have volunteers help out, but obviously it's really on their own time. Maybe not ultimately sustainable solution. And I've also heard that some places that have had lawsuits, they have settlement money that needs to go into independent air quality monitoring. So might be a niche case, but there have been more than one instance of this happening. So it's possible. And I'm also curious to kind of hear from other folks on the call to see if anyone else has ideas on fundraising thoughts.
This is Pat Coyle, and I haven't been on the calls for quite a long time, but I just actually on this thing caught my eye because it's kind of going in and out of my virtual background, but I've just got one of the little simple air sensor kits today and haven't yet got it set up, but wanted to do that. And the things that strike me, I was curious when we're talking about fundraising. I really appreciated the initiatives that Patricia described, and that she's been at it so long. I'm wondering whether or not the boundary between, if you will, citizen science and just community science is worth noting. For example, here in Livermore, California, while I've not engaged them on this front, there is a Quest Community Science Center that's intending to do sort of outreach into the community about the value of science and so forth. And you could see that many organizations like that might be around and might be interested in mapping air quality. Here in Northern California, we've had the fires that were, in some areas burned whole communities down, but in the rest of California made for extraordinarily bad air quality. And, some of us would be looking at the various purple air monitor sites for AQIs and so forth. But I'm just curious whether it's a little off topic for fundraising per se, but it's really about partnerships with more broadly citizen science organizations that may not have as focused a social justice and environmental justice emphasis as, for example, Patricia's work, which it's been going for a long time, and those are really insults to the community around that kind of enterprise that she's been documenting for a long time. But so I guess the key question is, are people finding collaborations with citizen science centers or groups or whatnot to be a fruitful way of doing that? So that, I guess that would be the question about the fundraising.
I can respond to that briefly, I think, in that Dr. Pierce is really working in an environmental health center where they educate young people about the environmental health aspects. So in a sense, I mean, he's probably done more now maybe than even before, but he has reached out to the community. I mean, he calls us community. But previous to that, he had a lot of calls when we first started out with this whole frac sand issue with respirable crystalline silica dust. He was getting calls from people all over about various kinds of air monitoring and that kind of thing, and what was the best and what wasn't. And some early work here was done by a guy, a civil engineer actually, who found an indoor monitor. I want to think that it's a Dylos monitor. I think they're indoor, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go back and I've stacks of stuff here and I have lots of stuff on my brain. But anyway, he decided to put those outside. And so what he did was he built a little birdhouse type arrangement and put those little Dylos monitors outside. And so numbers of people bought them. In fact, he even purchased several himself to get the whole thing started. And eventually we had probably 8 or 9 of those out in Chippewa County. And because he had the website, he had developed a website, which I encouraged him to do. But anyway, so he got this website. So each one of those little monitors were being registered on the website, so you could see right near the plant where the spikes were occurring. And it happens that at the time, EOG Resources, or Canadian Sand and Proppants had started out, and then we went into EOG Resources. And they were a little bit concerned about the fact that there were all these all these Dylos monitors around, and that they were registering on websites showing particulate matter, PM 2.5s, and or other things like fires, fire particulates or pine tree, whatever. And so anyway, we weren't too sure about what to do with the data, but it sure as heck scared the EOG Resources, because there are populations of people that live nearby their processing plant. So there was a guy from the western part of the state, and he said, I bet, this other guy is down in Florida. He said, I'm able to analyze data. So I said, oh, this sounds great. And I'll see if I can't contact the other guy. And so by taking 2 separate points, to the data from 2 separate ones of those things, he reported out a paper on this whole thing. Well, that really stirred up the community a little bit to know that actually this stuff was going on. But of course, the argument was, well, it maybe is not valid data. So EOG Resources then put up fence line data, and they hired an industrial researcher. And of course, the end result basically was there's no problem. But that may be a way to make people aware by getting the data out, by reporting it out, because I sent it all out in my Frac Sand Sentinel. I've got people from the eastern states, western states, and so on that I send to, but anyway, and not everybody reads it, but nonetheless, people get a hold of that material and they think, oh, wow, but that did raise some questions with EOG and with the industrial resources and stuff, or with their industrial researcher, but the state began to look at it too. But it's a long process when you stop to think about how you educate other people to realize that, yeah, we got a problem. So, and that was the beginning, and that's quite a long time, ago. So, and eventually that information on the website went down. He gave away those monitors to somebody or whatever, but it just does go to show that it is a process that you have to go through. It's not a long term either. So.
No, thank you, Patricia.
Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
I can take a stab. I don't think I'm going to be able to answer Patrick your questions directly, but appreciate you bringing up the distinction between citizen science and community science. In that public lab, we do really like to think about the distinction as citizen science is really still researcher driven, and it could be maybe a academic researcher, and the citizens are just individuals who collect the data but might not have that much say in how the research is designed, versus community science, where it's really the community members driving the research questions and the data collection methods, perhaps with support from academics or researchers, but it's really driven by the community. So I just wanted to highlight that distinction, that you brought that up.
I think that's a great point, and that's actually part of the boundary I was kind of looking at, is that, I recall even from the earliest days of grassroots mapping, the public lab in its earlier genesis after the Deepwater Horizon had an emphasis on advocacy and intervention and shining the light on environmental justice issues, and that's something that not every citizen science center, I mean, I'm not sure, like here in Livermore, if Quest Science Center's leadership would say, oh, we want to step up and get into controversial engagement with our community. And Livermore is not well, I guess I shouldn't say that so cavalierly, but there are certainly communities where that could be touchy. Over in Richmond, California, where we have a bunch of the Bay Area's refineries, they're always being cited, right, for this release or that release, or all the usual places you would see environmental insults occurring, that these kind of tools can be very helpful, but they may not be something that just a general purpose, like the Exploratorium in downtown San Francisco. Do they want to have that advocacy edge or not? That depends, right? So, but I guess the other question about fundraising is, it sounds like there have been really strong and interesting grant writing efforts over the years on Patricia's part, with some really big payoffs and some really early successes. But it's interesting, since did you say 13 years, Patricia? That's a long time to be working this problem.
Correct. 13 years.
And
it's a big commitment.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I appreciate
I'm
that.
still committed, sort of. So.
Yeah.
Very committed.
Well, and that comes to the usual sort of questions about most of us who are involved with nonprofits, is how do you fundraise for ongoing programs, and how do you make the story so compelling that people just are delighted to give you funds?
Mm-hmm.
Not trivial. Right. Yeah.
I know, David, you put a really good resource in the chat. Feel free to maybe talk about it more.
Yeah, thanks, David. I'll copy that and note that.
Yeah, sure. I'm not too familiar. I think this group did a good job early on. I don't know if folks are familiar with like Assembly Bill 617, but I know there was a lot of energy around that when it first got started, where groups are funded to do community air monitoring by air districts. And so this group really came together around that, and kind of leveraged that opportunity to come together, and many had similar efforts in air monitoring. Some of them were using the same air monitors and sensors to set up these networks. So I think that if there's a group that has a lot of momentum and kind of serves as a model for air monitoring, but I think if there's other groups that are working around the state that can do that, and maybe setting up like collaboratives, I think that's a good opportunity for funders where they're really interested in partnerships and relationship building across groups that are doing similar work. Yeah,
Yeah,
thought I'd
great
add that.
suggestion. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing. I know California also, the Air Resources Board has been, they have some grants to expand air quality monitoring in areas that are those environmental justice areas. And they've recently increased monitoring in Sacramento significantly because of just the traffic in the area and the highways that are around. So that definitely a lot of opportunity in. I think it's worth kind of keeping an eye out for those local grants. It's going to be really impactful. We have around 5 minutes left, and thank you all for really, really exciting and informative discussion. And I've learned a lot, and I hope it's useful for everyone else to kind of hear people's experiences. I think maybe in this last 5 minutes, we can maybe talk about anything that we heard today that we hope to bring back to our work, and anything that you'd like to see more of in lab events or resources that we can make sure that whatever we're putting out is the most useful for you all.
I want to say thank you very much for the visualization work. That's going to be awesome to explore with our data, and to see how we can use that. And I think also for us, fundraising is critical. And I think on Friday, the do-it-yourself air monitor is going to be interesting to see, because that might be, I don't know how it works, but maybe that's a way we can also get other monitors into the neighborhood. Are they walk around kind of things? Can you walk around? Are they like the Atmo tubes?
They can be. Yeah, I have one right here on my desk. So they're like this big. And if you plug them into a external power source, they can be walk around. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Patrick, it's the simple air sensor. So on Friday, we're going to have a live build of the simple air sensor and then
good.
hopefully read some data off of there. Yeah.
Cool. Very
Yeah.
neat.
Because
In the
also
nick of time, I got one.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. If you want to like build along with us in real time.
Oh, is it the same type that he got?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So how much does that cost?
I think it's $60 or less on the public stores, public website store, public
So
lab
because
store
that's
site.
something that the gentleman, David, who had to go get off in Baltimore, that might be an interesting, I don't know if he needs use, like lawsuit quality data or,
Right.
Mhm.
I think it's more for very good for raising awareness, and I think there's colored LEDs where it shows green, yellow, red. So for a really easy way to understand quality, like qualitatively how your air is, I doubt that it would be good enough to submit to regulatory purposes. But in the initial stages, I think it's more important to get kind of a broad overview of kind of how maybe just order of magnitude, kind of how bad things are, and then drill down into specific locations that you really want kind of those higher grade monitors.
Yeah. Exactly. And also like getting at that raising awareness piece of getting people interested in what you're doing, because it's just a little cute sensor with an LED that shows those colors. Like you can see right away the relative air quality, and it's like a conversation starter. Like, what is that thing? How does it work? So it's good for the getting people interested in a topic,
Right.
in an issue, like right there, like literally where you're standing. What's the air like right here? Yeah. So it's similar to what Patricia was saying about, you know, taking those purple air sensors out and then just like doing a demo with the frac sand. Like you can do that with, you know, being next to a idling bus or some whatever issue that you're concerned with.
Yeah, I love the idea, and I really hope we see more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, but we're almost at the top of the hour, so just wanted to say thank you everyone for joining, and
Thank you guys for hosting this. This is
yeah.
great.
No, really, thanks for bringing all your questions and your experiences and advice and guidance and everything. So we're really glad that you were here. And if you do want to get any email updates about like we'll post the recording, and then we'll post all the links that were shared in the chat as well, and then a little summary. If you want to get that, you can fill out a short feedback form here. There's also just a couple questions if you care to fill them out about how you found this event, but there's a space for your email. That's if you want to get the updates, you can enter that there. Dania, any last words for the call?
No, yeah, thank you everyone for joining. I'll drop my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me. Always happy to make connections with folks and see how we can help. So I really appreciate you all taking out from the day and joining us and sharing your knowledge.
I really appreciate today's work. If anybody would like to receive the Frac Sand Sentinel, all you need to do is my email. I'll see if I can't put the email in the chat. If you'd like to just write to me, I can add it to the list of recipients. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks, Mary Jo. Thanks, David, and thanks, Dania.
Oh,
Okay. Thank you guys. I'll see you on Thursday.
Yeah, I hope to see you all at
See you.
one of our future events.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.